All right. Well, welcome to the Crotocast, Daniel. And
thank you.
We'll be going over some things that I want you to pretty much answer and see what we have, you know?
I hope to do so.
All right. So this is Daniel Martin. I've known him for a couple years. My friend Nate here has known him for a couple years. He's a good man. I would tell you more about him, but I think that'd be good for him to say. So you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. How long do you want me to talk for? Because I could go back to my childhood.
Go into whatever you want right now.
That's what you can do when you come on my show and give your whole testimony.
Yes, exactly.
That's what I record.
Yeah, he's testimonies.
Well, I mean, no, in all seriousness, I mean, I'm not from Lancaster County originally. I've kind of been all over. I grew up mostly in Northern Virginia, and I was born in North Carolina. Lived a few years in Puerto Rico. Went to college in Virginia, and after that I lived in New York City for a little bit, and Connecticut, New Jersey, California. So I've kind of been all over, and I came to Lancaster in 2007 when I married my wife, and yeah, she's a native Pennsylvanian. So I've been learning a lot about Lancaster and how to say it properly.
That's when you know you're at home.
Yeah, sir. My political journey has been kind of interesting. It's kind of coincided with kind of settling down in Lancaster because I probably didn't pay attention that much to local issues in the past because I was kind of transient. And that's why I started out more on like a foreign policy focus. But the last few years, I mean, especially with COVID, it's like, wow, I really need to get involved and pay attention. So anyway, that's probably a little condensed version of my bio.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So I hear you have a podcast, huh?
Yes, sir. It's called Lancaster. I launched it last month. My first episode, first two, I guess, was with Josh Gerber, who ran for state rep last year as a libertarian in the 98th district, which Tom Jones ultimately won. And he keeps in touch with Tom, which is great. We try to hold his feet to the fire. It's not my district, but I kind of like to watch it.
Yep.
So yeah, that was my first episode, and we had a good discussion. I split it into 2 episodes, and then my third episode, which is the latest to come out, was just a half hour of me basically ranting about the LNP. And that was pretty much my motivation for starting it in the first place. Like, I feel like we need several local counters to the propaganda that they're putting out. And, you know, for a while we had the Lancaster Patriot, and they're still around, but they just don't have enough circulation. They didn't even have enough to sustain a print version. So maybe we just need more people putting out podcasts. Yeah. That's the latest trip I'm on, and, you know, that's why I'm here.
So that's what the Lancaster is about, is just being like maybe a new Patriot organization, or? Yeah,
I mean, I hope to interview more people, and from all ends of the political spectrum. You know, I don't mind if, you know, the crazy leftist down the street comes and talks to me. I'm saying that in jest because that person could be my friend. But I mean, I don't mind if they come and interview with me, and I'd like to find out, you know, what makes them tick. And same with like-minded people. Like, for the most part, Josh is. You know, I wanted to hear his elaborations. So yeah, anyone's welcome to come on and talk. And I mean, I'm particularly interested in, you know, people who've run for office, candidates, or the politicians themselves, but I'm sure they won't have the time to give me.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure the politicians will. Definitely.
Eventually, yeah.
Just got to ask and get no's.
When I get famous, become the local Rogan, sure.
I don't know if you need to be famous. You just need to get them on something that they want to speak out about, you know?
Yeah.
Especially if you get a following.
Right. Well, yeah, they have to take you seriously as the first step. And if they do, then great, they'll come and speak to you.
Yeah. Just get everybody on the Freedom Caucus, and then they'll join for sure. I mean, they have nothing to lose.
Sure.
They're already going hard at what they're doing now, you know?
Right. Cool. Well, yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to talk to any of them.
Yeah, Zimmerman will probably talk to you easily, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I saw him just last Monday at the Republican dinner. Yeah. Full disclosure, I'm on the committee, Republican committee.
What?
Township.
Just joking.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I'm not a lifelong Republican. I've kind of jumped around. Like, I actually left the party for 10 years after they wouldn't elect Ron Paul.
Yeah,
and was kind of all over the place.
That's what I did too. Yeah.
Yeah. Ron Paul revolution. It still lives on. I'm pumping my fist right now. So, yeah.
So why a podcast? Like, you have tons of free time to put into this, or like, what is that about?
I don't know if I have tons of free time, but I mean, I've been listening to a lot of different podcasts. My favorite is Dave Smith. He's so darn articulate. And yeah, I think it's a great vehicle. I think it's the wave of the future, just to get information out there and to articulate about complex issues, and I think he does a great job with that. And even Joe Rogan, I guess, is the most famous podcaster, and he doesn't interject as much of his opinion, but he's great at asking questions,
Yeah.
And he has a lot of interesting guests like Dave Smith.
So what do you mean, podcasts are better than newspapers? Don't you like newspapers more?
Well, yeah, I mean, newspapers have an important role, and I don't want to see print newspapers go away. I think that's the classic thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can only condense so much information on a page, and a lot of the times, especially reading LNP, they only give you a surface level interpretation, and a lot of times they give you their own. They may claim that they're balanced, but they're really putting their biases in on those articles. So it's really bad. It's almost worse than no information at all.
What do you mean? What bias? They don't change your words or anything, do they? Like, it doesn't make any sense right now.
Well, I'm glad you asked, Brad. Yeah, they've been known to change the words on a few letters to the editor. We could start there. I mean, from what I hear, they change the words of other people too, like candidates. But I don't want to go on record on that. I can let the candidates speak for themselves. But speaking from personal experience, yeah, like I've written some letters, and other people have written about this. They water it down to say, like, if you have a strong opinion, they'll just write, in my view, it's like, why do you have to add that to it? Like, of course it's in his view. That's why he wrote it. So, I don't know. They did that. Yeah, my second to last letter that got published I was pushing back on, it was kind of the whole idea about, well, there were these pastors that were talking about how, there's no risk in taking, what's it called, puberty blockers.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't say there's no risk, but they said something about, what was it? They don't cause permanent harm, or they're reversible or something like that. I don't have the article in front of me. But anyway, that was the one. I was just pointing out this one thing when I wrote the letter, and I said, hey, look, I agree with a lot of what you wrote in this article, because I'm against bullying. Obviously, it's terrible. I mean, there was a suicide this past week, which a lot of people know about. It was a trans kid. Really terrible. So anti-bullying, I'm all about that. But the flip side of this is, if you encourage kids to become transgender, you're leading them down a path of medication, which is really harmful. And that's what I wanted to point out in this letter. Like, hey, I said people should research what, for example, testosterone does to girls. So that was, and instead of, okay, so they wouldn't let me put the word girls, because I guess once a biologically born boy decides that they're going to be a girl, the way the system works now is that they're automatically affirmed, and so you're not allowed to call them a boy anymore. So, and that's kind of the whole point of what I was pushing back against in the letter. But they wouldn't even let me call girls. They said, well, here's what they changed it to: persons assigned female at birth. I'm like, what the heck is that? Like, that's just nonsensical jargon. I mean, it's yeah. I'll probably get hate. Since
we're on this topic, like, what are the issues in Lancaster County that you see that are major that we should do something about?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, that's a big one, obviously, with the school board race. Like, some of the candidates on the Republican side want to have policies that, like, protect girls' sports. And I think one of the big issues is, kind of flagging books that might be some parents might think are inappropriate, and it's fine. Some parents might not think it's inappropriate, and some people might, because it's like porn,
Yeah.
But I mean,
is that based off that one short clip of that pastor reading that book? to the panel of people and they asked him to stop.
Yeah, I did not actually see that, but I heard about it. Yeah, it's obviously porn. But here's the thing. Now, I'm going to give you my opinion on this. Like, I think everyone is in theory against porn, right? And I've talked to some very liberal,
Yeah, especially children.
For the very least case kids.
Very least for kids, yes. Yes. And
I don't know about Bill Maher, but for kids, yeah.
Right. So I think, most decent people are against the idea of porn being in your books in the school. But here's the thing, like, if it turns out to be like anything but heterosexual porn, a lot of people on the left might think, and all of a sudden this is virtuous. That in a nutshell is the problem. Like, oh, well, it's inclusive porn. Like, what?
Oh,
It's still porn. That's what I think. I mean, if I'm wrong, I would love to hear their argument, but that's exactly what it is, because it's having talked to people out on the campaign trail. I was door knocking with some of the candidates and I'm trying to help. And
so, are you a parent then?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I guess it hits home for you more than it would for me. I'm not a parent, so yeah.
It does hit home. And I mean, here's the thing. Like, I'm not personally worried about my own kids, but I completely 100% sympathize with the parents who are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my son's only in 6th grade and he doesn't read enough books as it is anyway. So I'm not worried about him going out to the library and finding something, but I think these books are only available in the high school anyway. And yeah, I mean, maybe they're hard to find, or, unless you actively seek these books. So yeah, it's a tough issue, because like then the other side says, well, you're making a mountain out of a mole. I'm getting the metaphor mixed up.
Yeah.
A mountain out of a molehill or something like that. Yeah. So, okay, I can see their point, but so then what's the harm in removing it? It goes both ways. Like, you say, what's the harm of leaving it in there? Well, what's the harm of, well, not even removing it, but flagging it for, hey, this is all that the Republican candidates want. They don't want to ban books. See, this is one of the lies that's being told in the paper. They're calling it book banning, or at least they're quoting the Democrats who are saying that, and it's totally not true. I've spoken to every single one of the candidates, and none of them are for banning books. They just want a system in place that says, hey, let's flag this so that parents have to sign a waiver or give consent for their kid to read it.
So maybe that's a strategy Republicans should take, is just put out something against what they said and then have them print it. You see? I mean, just use their own strategies against them, right?
I'm just going to interject for a little bit, going back to the puberty blockers.
Yes.
According to the Mayo Clinic or the Cleveland Clinic, I only saw that the question being asked, are changes permanent?
Right.
The GnRH analogs don't cause permanent physical changes. Instead, they pause puberty. That offers a chance to explore gender identity. It also gives youth and their families time to plan for the psychologist, medical, developmental, social, and legal issues that may lie ahead. When a person stops taking them, puberty starts again. But if you scroll down, what are the possible side effects? So that's just saying, oh, you can just pick up and start whenever you want. Possible side effects: swelling, weight gain, hot flashes, headaches, mood changes, fancy that, growth spurts, bone growth, bone density, fertility. So it might have long-term effects on those things. That sounds pretty bad, right. So it's just, we can just get you right back along to the puberty whenever you decide to stop. But it's not saying that they're not going to be bad.
And that's what fired me up about this original op-ed that these pastors wrote. And the irony was, the word facts was in the title of that op-ed. They said it was something called like local clergy promote facts about transgender youth. I'm like, well, that's clearly not a fact, that specific area that they just talked about. And
there you go. You need to bring on clergy that have the opposite facts. That's real facts.
Right.
There was even a few things about here, like trying to get people not to do them, even if you want gender affirming surgery. Because like if you stop for, like, if a male stops his process of maturing, there won't be anything there to do surgery on. So it's like, okay, then the only thing I could see is that they're just like, you maybe take a month to think about it, but still it goes back to like, all right, we can't stop everybody from having surgeries, so why can't this kid decide this later in life when they're 18?
Right.
Or closer to going through the developmental process.
Yeah. There's so many downsides of it.
Yeah.
I mean, and even if in theory, like, there were no physical side effects or long-term changes with the puberty blockers themselves, like, what are the psychological, like, if all your peers are going through puberty and you somehow delayed yours, so yours is not until, like, whatever, a year later, I mean, what about the psychological harm of that? I mean, they didn't talk about that, but the main point I made besides that is what I wanted to say, here's another thing they changed in the letter, was that the vast majority of kids who take puberty blockers, they go on to the cross-sex hormones, which do in fact cause permanent damage and are really bad, which includes the testosterone for girls. And so they changed my words. They said many kids, not vast majority. But I looked up an actual study. You can look it up. There's a site there. I mentioned this also in my podcast. Yep. There's a study by Tavistock, and it was cited by the BBC. And they studied like 48 kids, and like 47 out of the 48 who took the puberty blockers went on to take cross-sex hormones. So that's like almost all of them. So if you sit and tell me that, well, there's no risk in these puberty blockers, it's just delaying puberty, like, la-di-da, that sounds wonderful, but it is so high risk that it just blows my mind that this could be printed and LNP celebrated. This is facts being promoted. Like, what?
Yeah. So since we're still on this, what's the conversation within the Republican Party about this stuff? Is there anybody that's really against it at all? Is there any pushback from them to not put something out, or everybody's just like full step ahead, same belief?
Well, no, that's interesting. Some people I know, I personally wish the Republican candidates would talk more about medical freedom, like the COVID stuff, like, vaccine mandates. And I mean, that was never an issue in school, but I mean, the mask, having kids wear masks all day, I'm still very against that. And I'm against school closures, and nobody ever talks about that anymore. And, I know the township candidates, the Republican candidates, would vote the way I went to on that if they were on the school board, but they don't. It's not even part of their plank. So I wish they talked more about that personally and less about the.
Yeah, you'll have some on your podcast, right? Sometime, probably.
Yeah. He hasn't followed through on that yet, but I don't know. He's busy campaigning, so
yeah, makes sense.
I'm gonna bug him again.
Bug him, be like, hey, let me give you a soundbite.
Yeah,
let me help you with the sound bites, man. You can just put these out.
Yeah.
Did you guys want to have that clip of that pastor?
Sure.
You don't have to.
Yeah, why not?
Right? Oh yeah.
You said you hadn't heard it. You only heard about it.
Yeah, I haven't actually heard it.
Hello, Navarro. Suck any good lately. What's wrong, Navarro? I think you like a big in your mouth. Ha ha ha. Page 23. The other boy. Here it is. What's the educational benefit of talking about What's the educational benefit of talking about that? Is that going to help someone on the SAT score? Hear me kind. Get a shot of that. She can care less. That's a sign. She needs to put down her sign.
It's a little bit more, but there's a person on the board with a sign, kind of a protest sign against it, and they didn't allow anybody in the audience to have a sign, so that's why they're getting mad about that, saying, "No, she has a sign."
Yeah.
And then now they're saying remove the gentleman.
For what? For asking you to abide by the rules. A board member held up a sign, but the audience couldn't hold up signs. This is tyranny, and we're dealing with a corrupt government system.
He's being escorted out.
I don't want to hurt you. Hello, Navarro.
So was that from a school board meeting, or?
Yeah, school board.
Where was that at specifically? Do you remember?
I don't know if it says it. I can look here.
I mean, it could have been any of the, like, Hempfield Township. I don't know. I should know this. I haven't been to enough school.
Yeah,
buildings.
I don't know if this was local, but I mean that has 20 million views. I just know it's happening
definitely
around.
not local. It's happening all over the country, right?
Yeah, it is. That's crazy.
It is crazy. And where I grew up, Northern Virginia, Loudoun County, it was a big deal because there was like an attack in one of the bathrooms from a
I heard that.
boy going to that made national news. So, and I get it. I mean, maybe that's an isolated incident, and, we don't want to demonize like trans kids like they're predators going into girls' bathrooms. But at the same time, girls have the right to feel safe. I don't know what it's like to be, female, and I get it. Men are the more aggressive sex of the two, and it's like, I'm not going to diminish a girl's desire for safety, basically. So.
Sure. It was in Asheville, North Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah, so what's something people can do now in this area or maybe across the country to stop stuff like this so they don't agree with it?
Stop stuff like the propaganda or the agendas in school?
Or the agendas in school, either or.
I mean, I don't know I don't have any other solutions other than what we're doing now is to run, more conservative candidates for school board. And it's like, it's not, and I hate the labels liberal and conservative. It's like, parents should be conservative about what their kids are learning to begin with, no matter their political ideology.
Yeah, everybody's a little bit liberal and a little bit conservative.
Right, exactly. So
you say a conservative candidate, and then somebody hears that and they go, ugh.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But it's like talking about like actual, like, is this person going to be like completely off their rocker, or just, hey, we just want some sanity in here. Yeah,
maybe we should figure out a podcast to like teach the world what liberal and conservative is.
Right.
Because I think those terms are just totally out of whack. It's like two sides nowadays when really everybody's mixed together.
We just had a debate about the definition of deja vu. You had your own definition about it, and you were right in how you were explaining it for what you thought it was, and I was right in how I was explaining how I thought it was. But there is like an actual definition, but both sides had their own. Just like, what does the word mean?
Yeah, that was the last podcast with my friend Brad.
I never thought about that. Deja vu.
But like, there's different definitions that we've created for the word, and then what a word actually is, and you gotta say what you actually mean by conservative. Are you just gonna go over these values and how we think fiscally and what we want in education, or does that mean I'm a right wing conspiratorial person, QAnon kind of guy?
Yeah,
that's like somebody would just automatically believe that by hearing conservative.
Right.
Or you like Charlie Kirk and Trump and all those people.
I think all those labels are problematic.
Right, exactly.
And one of them that's gets thrown around now is like extremist. Is like, what does extreme mean? Like, extremely what? Like,
anybody can be extreme.
I'm extreme about the truth. Like, does that make me an extremist? Like,
you're a truth extremist. How dare you?
Yeah. Well, extremist and moderate, like, because I mean, I don't agree with. Yeah, there's some dissent within, especially within the Republican Party, but within every party, I'm sure. Like,
every party.
How do we want to straddle this? Like, let's come off as more moderate, and we don't want to identify with a quote unquote extremist.
Why don't we just all be who we are?
Yeah, it's like, what does that even mean? It's like, who's extreme according to who? Like, if the other side calls you an extremist, like now you're conceding that.
It's like that childhood fight. You're an extremist. No, you're an extremist. No, you're an extremist. No, you're an extremist. Oh,
right.
Lord.
So, I don't know. Moderate just seems like a cop-out. It's like, well, what are we moderate about? Like, does it mean we're not that... We don't have a strength of conviction that we're just going to go along with it? It's like, I don't understand it.
So what? What, you're trying to say you're a centrist or something? No.
Well, yeah. What does that mean, too? Like,
yeah, I guess so. There's got to be a podcast to break all those terms down.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
that's kind of the beauty of the podcasting, though.
Right.
I think it's like a bringing back of the age of reason, back when debating was fun and everybody read books and people wanted to, like, I just want to know, like, I want to hear what people have to say. And the more people are listening, the more people will not even get triggered by a word and be like, no, I know that can mean different things. Let me hear what the guy has to say, and then I can determine whether okay, no, you are the stereotypical conservative, and then you're going to go vote for war and all that. Or, no, that guy just wants these values. He doesn't want to go to war. He can be a Republican and not be a warmonger. It depends on how you're going to act, and let's see what the guy does and then judge him.
Yeah, exactly. No, I was just thinking, what have you ever seen that axis online? There's like, it has a more accurate scale. It has like political left and political right, and then there's authoritarian and libertarian on the y-axis. Yep. I think that's a little more accurate in the circle, because when I hear, like, when I grew up hearing right wing, I always thought of that as somebody who's like very pro-government and, go authoritarian. But now if I think about people who are called on the right, they're nothing like that. They're more for less, they're kind of anti-government, and they're actually more skeptical of the media. So it's really
and
weird
more protective of their family.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of flipped around.
We're the extreme, if we want to put it. Other side's like, take my kids, just have them. It's like, what?
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, does the government...
Government, please take my kids from me. Pay me for them first, though. Like, what? Yeah, so since we got into that and people, how to solve that, which is anything to do with trans and pushing that onto your children, if you have a school system, you see that, or maybe you want to prevent it, you get on the school board yourself, or you help people in your church or people in your community get on the school board that agree with you. Since that's a solution, is there anything else besides that issue that you see here that needs work on, or something that
like
really
on a local level, or like
local level?
I mean, in the schools, there's a number of problems they're trying to solve. Like there's a teacher shortage, and we need to pay our teachers more. That's something the Republicans stand for. And I honestly couldn't tell you what the Democrats stand for, other than opposing the Republican boogeyman, because that's basically what the whole article was that came out a couple of weeks ago. Like, we're fighting far right. They used the word far right 5 times in that article, and I just got another published letter on Friday where I called that out. I was like, what do the Democrats even stand for? They're just calling the Republicans far right. So why don't they bring up any actual issue? So. Yeah. So anyway, my point is, I support anyone who stands for actual issues.
I hope you get the chance to get that Democratic candidate running for school board here on your podcast and question her to death on what Democrats are wanting to do.
Right. Well, she's from a different district.
Yeah, she is. But still, I mean, it'd be fun to just pick her brain. And I don't think she's too left, in my opinion. I think she's more moderate, but it'd be good to pick her brain to hear what the Democrats are thinking and what her colleagues are doing and why she ran for school board and all that stuff. If not, I will.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, and it really should be a nonpartisan position, like a lot of other positions in local government.
But I mean, nothing's nonpartisan because everybody has ideas and thoughts and what they believe, and even judges. I mean, judges will have their judgment, and after judgment, why'd you do that? And you're like, what? Why are you biased? Like, I thought you were going to be unbiased here.
and my point kind of in writing this letter was like, it's not just about who I agree with and disagree with. It's that there needs to be nuance to these conversations, because to me, it just seems like, especially like with the trans issue, the Democrats are just trying to simplify it and make it all about inclusivity. And my point is there's more nuance to that, and it's much more complicated, and you can't just simplify that for people and say, We're inclusive. We support them no matter what, and you guys are bigots if you're not on board with that. That's just, I hate that lack of nuance, and I'm so against that. So anyway,
is this books and the trans stuff the only issues in your head, or is there other? No,
ones? I mean,
I know you said LNP, that might be an issue, but I mean,
What
can people really do about
issues?
That? I mean,
there's a lot of other issues in the local scale that I don't have answers for. I mean, development and traffic. Those are more like commissioner level things.
Yeah, and it looks like they're doing stuff here on 222 to make it more lanes now.
Yeah, that's helpful. Local issues. See, I'm just learning a lot of these functions as I go. There's the count. And it's hard to distinguish like all these different levels of government. I mean, you have you have county commissioners, then you have the township commissioners, you have school board, you
Yeah, how can people like keep all this in order? You know,
Right.
They need something to go to keep it all in
It's
order.
confusing, and like there's no class on this, and the
Maybe you
information
should be
really
the
isn't that
class. Maybe that could be like the thing for your podcast, classing links.
Well, this is actually,
government
I've actually thought of this. Like, if I ever ran for state rep or something, this would be one of my planks. Is like, I want to help educate people, like, because you might ask somebody like, what's an issue that's important to you, and they might bring up something that has nothing to do with state rep. Or I've seen it on the vice versa, like on the campaign trail with the school board members. Like, somebody asked them about vouchers. And we had to tell them, well, that has nothing to do with the school district. That's a state level issue. So we can comment on being for or against it, but it's not something we would control on the school board.
People need to know that, because they'll put pressure on the local level, get discouraged, and not know how to deal with it on the state level, which is going to their state reps to introduce a bill, and then they go to their senators to get the bill passed. It's like, people don't know the system. So maybe that's something we both can work on. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know everything. I'd love to know for myself, but I'd love to outline my thoughts so that it can help others understand. Yeah. Like, once I learn what all these different functions are at different levels of government.
Yeah, maybe we can go meet up with Zimmerman and others. You know.
Yeah.
Like, tons of people. I can list tons of names. There's a lot of helpful reps in office. That's for sure.
Yeah, and actually, Commissioner Ray D'Agostino. I always mess up his name. He gave a course a couple weeks ago that I attended. It was about local government, and I took copious notes, but it was a lot. So I can't recite off the top of my head. But one thing that struck me, there's a lot of different subcommittees on every level. There's so many ways you can get involved in local government, and there's all these committees I've never heard of. I wish I'd brought the list, but
I guess you could just get that on your own podcast, and we'll just share it.
Actually, I should find. I don't know where I put those notes, but I had several pages of notes, and there's actually, I think, a PowerPoint presentation somewhere. That's actually a good idea for an episode. Everything I learned from Ray a couple weeks ago, I'll just talk about it. And but it's almost overwhelming how many things you can do as a volunteer, and just to help out in your community. Yeah. So
cool.
Yeah.
And so at the beginning of the podcast, you said you were a Republican committee man. So how is it having tentacles all over the place, controlling all these people, having so much power?
Power? What power? I don't know. I mean, I technically represent, I don't even know how many voters are in my precinct. It's like, it covers like only a couple of neighborhoods, a few hundred people. I don't know. And I haven't even met most of them. I mean, I've been door knocking for various reasons in my precinct, but I wonder how many people actually know I'm the committee man. I don't know. But I'm only the committee man for the Republican side. So in my precinct is probably, it's roughly 50-50. I think we might technically have an edge, but in my immediate neighborhood, it's mostly Democrat. So I guarantee you most of my neighbors don't know I'm on the committee.
Maybe you can flip some of them or have some of them walk away.
Yeah, just walk away. I love that campaign. Yeah.
Wait, we better not reveal this to Democrats.
What the plan?
The plan. Oh no! Yeah. Keep it under wraps.
Have conversations.
Right, but the committee man. I mean, I don't really have that much influence.
Really?
I have a vote.
So you don't have shadow people they send out?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I don't have a cabinet or anything. I go to my committee meetings. I vote sometimes. That's about it.
Oh, so it's not that much stuff then, huh? Does it take a big time off your schedule either?
Well, I mean, it depends on which committee you're on, because I think it varies per committee. Yeah, I'm kind of disappointed in the amount we've met. I don't want to badmouth my own committee too much right now.
I mean, that's every committee. We've been in other groups together. We know how that is.
Yeah.
People been in businesses, people been in family meetings where people don't show. It's, you know what I mean? Or the meetings get totally canceled. Whatever happens.
Sure.
That's just life.
Yep. Exactly.
So why would somebody want to be a committee person?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, it was when I first saw my name on the ballot in the spring of 22. I mean, I thought that was pretty cool. Like, I'm running for office, and I had to go out and get at least 15 signatures So I was out there door knocking, and I was like, hey, I'm running for committee, man. So even doing that on the smallest scale is a good feeling. But once you're on the committee, you're kind of advancing in your network. Like I've been able to meet, other politicians in the county government, all the way up to the state level. I mean, I was meeting people like Ryan Ahmed before I was on the committee because I was involved with Defend the Guard, and he took a meeting from me before that. But yeah, I mean, to meet people in government is useful, and to to have a say on like the nominating committee. Like I had a say in who, well, I mean, you have these subcommittees in your committees, and you can have a say in who your party endorses. I think that can change a lot of the culture of your party. So if you want internal change within the specific party or committee on, that's probably the best way to start as a committee person.
Cool. Yeah. So is there any issues within like the party in general that you see like that are important, or I mean besides anything else that we talked about previously that you see coming forward from the committee or maybe up to the state level?
I mean, I could talk about Defend the Guard, but nobody's actually introduced that yet. We're hoping Tom Jones does, but
yeah. So what is Defend the Guard for people that don't know?
All right, so Defend the Guard is a bill that says your state's National Guard cannot be deployed to a combat zone overseas without a formal declaration of war from the U.S. Congress. And I was telling Brad, I gave a speech at my Toastmasters meeting today about Defend the Guard, and I asked the audience, or the members of the meeting, how many people know when's the last time the United States Congress declared a formal declaration of war? And we have one guy in our group who's like a constitutional scholar, so he was answering all my questions. Yeah, the answer is like 1941 or whenever, World War II. That was the last time.
Yeah, I would have been wrong.
Right.
I was going to assume maybe Korea was war, but no.
Yeah, no, there was no formal declaration there. And,
Wow.
So I was able to educate my Toastmasters group. Yeah, so that was one thing. The other thing, I asked them if anyone knew what the 10th Amendment was, and only the one guy knew. And the 10th Amendment, for all you listeners, yeah, it's the amendment of the Constitution that says anything that's not specifically cited in the Constitution that should be a federal power should go to the states. And that's Defend the Guard is in the spirit of that, because there's nothing saying that, hey, the president can pluck this state's National Guard and send them overseas, on an executive order.
I mean, you're teaching already, so I might as well just plug it. Lancaster.
Yeah.
Find all your constitutional needs.
Yeah. I mean, I'll definitely do an episode eventually on Defend the Guard. So a state's National Guard was originally created. I mean, there's a couple functions. One is to deal against natural disasters. Like with Hurricane Katrina, the Louisiana National Guard should have been dealing with that, right? So guess what? They weren't. And this was an anecdote I got from Sergeant Dan McKnight, who's kind of the head of the whole National Defend the Guard. And he always tells this story about how when he was serving the Idaho National Guard, his unit was deployed to Louisiana during Katrina because, like, most of Louisiana's National Guard was in Iraq or Afghanistan. And, like, what's with that? Why weren't they there in Louisiana, So that's problematic. No, I actually learned today, because there was this woman in my Toastmasters. She just joined. She's actually a veteran of the PA National Guard. And she said, yeah, I appreciated your presentation. I was actually in the National Guard, and I went to Louisiana for Katrina.
Are you going to get her on the podcast or what?
That is a really good idea. I just met her, so I got to warm up to that. But yeah, she's super nice. And
I don't think you got to warm up. Just ask. Yeah. What's the worst that can happen? No, not yet.
Yeah. So I want to jump ahead here, because here's what the feedback she gave me afterwards. Because I said, I asked her if you'd ever heard of this bill as a National Guards member, and she said no. And I said, well, now that I've given the presentation, do you have a favorable view of it? And she told me not really. And I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. And she followed up, it's not that I'm against it in principle, But she said that the PA National Guard actually has a huge role. Like they're out there deployed in lots of places.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like, overseas, not just going to Louisiana for natural disasters. And she said, I just don't see it happening in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So I appreciated her feedback. She was super polite about it, and she's wonderful. And I told her, this is really good feedback because I don't talk to enough National Guardsmen directly about this issue. It's important to have them backing this too, obviously.
Yep.
And I hope to talk to more guardsmen and women, because Sergeant McKnight, I think at least on the website, it made it sound like there's a super majority of veterans who support this bill. Maybe that's a misrepresentation on my part, but I thought this was something that had majority veteran backing, but maybe that's not true. But maybe they're just not understanding it. I don't know.
Well, it might be the people that are deployed right now might feel prideful of what they're doing.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. That was the first thought that came to mind. Like, because if this bill were to get passed, then it immediately, whatever PA National Guard is in Syria or wherever right now, they'd have to come home, and maybe they don't want to come home. That's a fair point. I mean, maybe that needs to be worked into the bill. Like, if you're already there, you shouldn't have to come home right now.
Just a grandfathered in.
You can be grandfathered in.
New deployments.
Yes. See, I love that idea. I'm going to take that to national management of the Defend the Guard bill. That's really good feedback. I was looking for the word grandfathered in. Yeah. Would be perfect. Yeah, I think that would be useful. Helping
just now have it out there. If you want to get deployed, you're going reserves or anywhere else.
Right. And here's the thing. I think this is a selling point of the bill. Like, it does not preclude being deployed for training.
Right.
You can go overseas for training.
Yeah.
Which might be one of the big appeals of serving under the National Guard is that you can be deployed. Yeah. It sounds appealing to me. I mean, I never served, but I had thought about it in the 90s when one of my coworkers, I was working at IBM, she got deployed to Bosnia, and I mean, I was ignorant about what was going on in Bosnia, but it sounded like those who were deployed were relatively safe, and she seemed to be having a good time there, and like she was trying to convince me, because I hated my job at the time, and she's like, you should think about the National Guard. This was up in Connecticut, and I actually seriously thought about it, like just to get out of my work, but that's probably not a great reason to join the service, just to get out of the work because you don't like your job. But that was the closest I ever came to enlisting. But it's the appeal of traveling overseas I still have, and my point is, so people who want to do that, they still can under training, and you don't have all the risks of death from actual combat.
I knew it sounded familiar. There's a video on Origin USA because Jocko Willink is involved in that company. He addresses the Pennsylvania National Guard 228 because he served with them in Ramadi.
Okay.
And he's addressing the whole unit, telling them about what the unit's about and what's behind it and the hard things. So I was like, yeah, they have been deployed all over the place. Like these guys were fighting.
Yeah. Jocko Willink, I haven't heard that name in a while. He was on Rogan one time, I remember.
He's on Rogan a bunch. He has his own amazing podcast called Jocko Podcast.
Okay, cool.
But that guy goes into lots of history and covers books and leadership things. So like you're either learning about the genocide in Rwanda or Colonel David Hackworth serving in Vietnam, or he's just talking about his own leadership tactics that he teaches because he has a company that does it. And
he's a really knowledgeable.
I've learned a lot of he reads a lot of books when it's about war. It's like first person, boots on the ground soldiers that you'll never have heard their story.
Right.
That these books would be amazing movies, but just like the amount of heroism that doesn't get recognized to just like the normal guy like on the ground. And these books cover stuff like that. And just his voice when he reads them, man, like it's not even his inflection, just the way he reads it is just real. And I'm like a lot of the time I'm like, because I'm in landscape and I'm just like riding a mower and like all of a sudden I just start crying because it's just this thing's happening. It's just like a lot of sad stuff he goes over, but it's a good show.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to check it out.
Yeah, one of the crazy books I went over was like Machete Season. I was like, oh my
Yeah, that's
word.
what the genocide in Rwanda.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It was like Catholics killing Catholics. I was like, what the heck?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
The only reason you could tell the difference is because they knew the difference because they were neighbors. Because like if you were it's Sunni and
that's Muslim.
Not Muslim. I'm sorry. What are the two tribes?
Tutsi and I forget the other one.
Yeah, there's two tribes, all the same people. So say we invaded them and we had to like, the Tutsis are the good ones and the other one was the bad. Nobody would know without intelligence. They only knew the difference between each other to kill each other because they knew each other. Like that's how like crazy.
That's wild.
And that's and Jocko was getting emotional because he was deployed like off the coast, and that was something that we were never asked to go in and intervene. But we intervene in everything else, though.
Yeah, yeah, that would be.
He's just sitting there on a carrier, just not able to do anything.
Right.
Crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Yeah. So, what about third parties? Have you seen anything interesting in coming out in third parties? Anything like that?
I mean,
any third parties coming to any meetings you attend, or any third parties like you run across with the school board stuff or within your normal walk?
I haven't seen anything locally, but I do follow like the Mises Caucus of the Libertarian Party on a national level. I follow that online just because like people like Dave Smith are members of that caucus, and they seem to be very principled in terms of opposing war. We could get into the whole Israel-Palestine conflict, right? But that's a really touchy topic. But I've observed that, out of conservatives, like the Mises people are very steadfast in being against war and escalation and U.S. involvement, namely. So, yeah, I can't speak of anything going on a local level because I'm not a libertarian anymore.
Makes sense. So, do you think there's anything like hindering the Libertarian Party that you see, even on a local level?
Hindering the Libertarian Party? There's a lot of infighting, and there's people forming their own factions, like Keystone, And I'm not bad-mouthing those people. This is not my dog fight anymore.
Yeah, no. But it's on a local level. It's all happening around here.
I thought that was unfortunate how that fracture happened, when it did.
Me too.
Yeah, and people, from what I've observed, still hate the Mises because they took over the party, and
about this whole thing with me. I had my head in the middle of all of it, trying to stop the conflict, and settle both sides and keep both sides together so they could work together to, get stuff accomplished.
Right. Yeah. No, it was a fascinating takeover. I guess it's all nationwide now.
Yeah.
And ideologically speaking, I support everything about them. I don't know if people might have issues with the way they took power. Like, I'm still figuring out the politics of party level politics. It's ugly no matter where you are.
It's not your problem right now. You're not my problem. Party, so
yeah, but yeah, I like the Mises people.
Yeah,
ideologically speaking.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you heard anything about the Forward Party or anything like that? I heard about Forward Party around here.
I don't know a whole lot about it. It just seemed kind of wishy-washy when they were, at the Ford. When were they involved in? Was it the 2020 election or 2022? I don't remember. I just remember like Andrew Yang was there, and he was like formerly a Democrat, and it's like, so now it's just Democrat light. I don't know. I didn't really understand enough about that party. It just seemed like there were certain instances online where it's like they didn't have a position at all. It's like, what? Like, you have to have a position. Like, is your position just that you're malleable? Like, I don't.
Yeah, that's what it seems like it is. They're more malleable. They want to include everybody type of deal. It seems like.
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to work. Unless your position is that, here's an idea. Like, what if you made every level of government like open direct democracy? It's like, let's open up this position so that anyone can vote on it. That's the only thing I can think of. I think it's also called like pirate democracy. Maybe if that's your position is to like everyone should vote on it and we don't have any position. That'd be one thing, but I don't think that's what Forward was. So And I mean, I don't know if that idea could work or not, because
I guess we'll have somebody from the Forward Party on, so then explain about it. Have somebody from the Libertarian Party on and explain about it.
Right.
You know.
And I've heard that, going back to that idea, that sounds like a crazy idea to have just open democracy on every level.
Yeah.
Where you can vote. And I mean, when I first heard about it, I was like, that's actually a good idea. That's a pure democracy. But then, I mean, to be blunt, like, then you're trusting the people to make these decisions, and people are easily propagandized.
Unless you're making it very, very, very localized.
Right.
And the cities are determining what goes on.
That's
for the
correct.
people around them.
Yeah.
I've only heard like instances because I think it might be in Colorado, or maybe it's just an example of something in Canada. I can't quite remember. It's about hunting.
Okay.
And it's pretty much, or California is one of those three. The people in the cities have pretty much voted on making like hunting bans for people who they don't even they're not even living there, and they're making it illegal to like hunt bear in certain places, or can't have a firearm here, depending on, so they're just impacting people's lives who live in the woods while you're living in the city.
Yeah.
So voting on everything, even if you're quote unquote educated on it, you don't have stake in the game.
Exactly.
So things like that could be, or the city you're making things, or what the farmers got to do. Well, I have opinions on how things are, farming and all that, and there's, you can do it clean or you can do it with chemicals, and I get like how much easier it is with chemicals, and that's
right.
There's like only one guy who it took him 20 years to like take it industrial all the way to, I forget the wording for it, but just completely recycle everything. It's just a ecosystem pretty much, but a farm with nothing man-made, just completely pure. But he's like, it's hard, dude. He wasn't like even saying everybody has to do it and I gotta feed everybody. But then people in cities would be like, oh, I only want natural, and all these farmers gotta get rid of it, and like how much money they'd have to spend, and it sounds nice. Ideology.
Exactly.
In an idealist world.
That's a good point about, I mean, the more local something is, the easier it is to solve problems. I mean, because, you can get direct involvement, and you can hold the office holders accountable because you can actually see them and you have access to them. I think that's one thing that very early on, like back in 2008 when Ron Paul was running, that's one thing that made a huge impression on me. He was answering some question on TV, and he said that, the more complex the problem, the better it is to break it down at a more granular local level. The more you should localize it. I think that was paraphrasing what he said, and that always stuck with me. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I think people on the local level need a purpose anyways, so why not?
Right.
There's so many people, wanting something to do.
Right.
Whereas if you push it up the ladder, then it's whatever company decides to do whatever with it as easy as possible, the fastest way to make money,
Right.
So if you bring it down, people will literally give their time for free to get some solution made. When they find a solution, they should reap the benefits,
Right.
That's why, we're supposed to be a free market, economy. But instead we call ourselves capitalists, and then if we don't call ourselves that, then we become very controlled, So it just gets very ugly very fast. But on the democratic voting way, why is it that we're called a republic? Do you know the differences? You want to explain the differences?
Because we're a constitutional republic, not a true democracy.
Yeah, what's the difference between democracy and republic?
I don't know. You tell me. I never really thought about it. For a republic, it's representation of the people by a minority of the people. Right.
So the republic protects minorities, where a democracy is majority rule. Right. So the majority pushes over to the minority.
Right.
So that's the difference. And locality, you're going to have more democratic because it's a small group. But imagine if you had a whole state pushing over another state, with their power, like California always does.
Right.
It was never like that until it became that type of, thing there, because they weren't that before, And I was actually Republican back, when Reagan was in, and you had, for sure. You even had Terminator.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how that's flipped. Oh, and that I'm kind of segueing into another topic, because we were talking about cities versus, rural areas, and that's another reason we have the electoral college, because you don't want the cities deciding the fate of the whole country, because the culture is very different in the city from the country, and there's different set of problems. So yeah, I wouldn't want, if I lived out as a farmer, I wouldn't want the people city deciding all the votes, of who's representing us.
Yeah. And what does our founder say? A well-informed population, protects our, republic.
Right.
So if we just keep informing people and making sure they know what they could do, and that's the whole point of this podcast.
Yeah.
Help people find new people that they can listen to, help people find the knowledge they need and find the solutions, that they can use.
Right. And I'm just brainstorming here while we're talking about cities, because this came up at a libertarian meeting last year. Why is it that 20 years ago, we had plenty of cities, like New York City had Mayor Giuliani. There were plenty of Republican mayor-led cities. And like you just said, California had, I'm sure, plenty of Republican mayors, and it had a Republican governor. So I don't think there's a single major city now in 2023 that doesn't have a Democratic mayor. And why is that? What is flipped? Like, I mean, I would love to have a discussion about that. Maybe that's for another podcast, but
yeah, that'd be a good discussion.
I'm sure there's a lot of factors there, but it's crazy how that's.
Who can we bring in for that? Anybody have any ideas?
I don't know. I remember Dom brought that question. Is he still the chair of the?
Yeah, he's still the chair. Yeah, he's also my nonprofit chair too.
Okay, yeah. He brought up that question. I think it was during one of those philosophy discussions that Roy leads. And I thought that was a really interesting question, and I still haven't gotten my answer. I mean, I have some ideas, but
things are crappier in cities, and Democrats promise free stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of it, for sure.
That's my best guess without research.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also people saying that Democrats are these people that vote for Democrats, and then shaming, white people, for lack of better terms, into you're racist if you don't vote.
There's a lot of identity politics in play.
Yeah, it's identity politics.
That got really bad in the last 10 years, like probably starting with Obama.
Yep. I mean, yeah. I mean, it didn't start there, but it got encouraged.
It didn't, yeah, it definitely
the fire got fueled.
Absolutely.
So you should have just learned that you can be black and still be like Bush.
Yeah.
Start wars.
That's basically what he was.
I think people are coming around, though. It's just we gotta get the people that are scared to have conversation to have more conversation. Like I just got in a conversation with somebody that calls himself a Christian, but don't believe in God, but sides with the Christian faith, but at the same time they don't believe in God. So it's like I'm trying to have this conversation and they're confused, so I'm just trying to let them speak through it. So I think that's where a lot of people are at. It's just they're just so confused and they don't have the answers, so they're just speaking, and then their head's just filled with whatever, and they're like, whatever, I'm just gonna do the blue button, because they don't have an answer. So hopefully the blue button has the answer. So I think really the red button needs the answer. It needs to be like, hey, walk away from that, and these are your answers. We have them all right here. So I think that's the next step.
They just need to come to your podcast and think it out and talk it out.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Cool. All right.
I think that's pretty good.